All right, we're 2 minutes in, so let's get started. For those of you joining us right now, welcome to our Navigating Career Transitions live webinar today. I say webinar loosely. There's not going to be like a PowerPoint presentation or anything like that. We'll keep it sort of conversational, a little dynamic. I always feel like that's kind of more engaging for everyone. And the overall kind of summary of what today's session will be is sort of talking about all of the prep work that goes into having a smooth job to job switch, whether that's going, well, mainly let's talk about like clinical kind of job switching. And we'll talk about the psychological, mental, emotional prep that comes into that process, how to go through that smoothly, and then also how to protect yourself on paper as well, legally speaking, and make sure that everything is teed up with your current/former employer, as well as things are ready when you're going to your next one. So my name is Zhen Chan. I'm a pediatrician practicing in Washington, D.C. I'm the founder, CEO of a company called Grapevine, which is a community for exclusively doctors to connect with each other, have more effective networking, and then be able to get connected with resources as well to individuals like Dr. Shabbir and Kyle here. And yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. I'll switch it over to Dr. Shabbir so you can give a little intro.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. I'm so happy to be here with my amazing co-panelists. So I am Amna Shabbir. I am a geriatrician internist based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm a master certified coach. I love helping high achievers create sustainable well-being. I am extremely passionate about helping a subset of those high achievers, which are present in the audience and listening to the replays, which are physicians. There's so much that goes into the mental component of the decisions that we make, and I love advocating for that. I am the founder and CEO of the Early Career Physicians Institute and Amna Shabbir Wellness Coaching, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Awesome. And Kyle?
Yeah, I will echo all the excitement on being here. Love talking about this stuff. Kyle Claussen, CEO of Resolve. We are going to talk more about the paper probably and the legal aspects of what transition looks like in your career. And so we work with physicians all across the country, all specialties, on doing just that, leaving one position, analyzing new positions. And so we're all about empowering doctors as they go through that process. So happy to field the questions and to have the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you both for being here with us this morning. So I like to put everything in perspective of a case. That's just always how we learn things in med school and residency and when we're doing like grand rounds and stuff. So have a little hypothetical case just to set some framework. So what I got is Dr. Emily Rodriguez is a 35-year-old internist, has been working at a large hospital system for 5 years since she graduated residency. She's considering leaving her current position due to a sense of burnout and a desire for more autonomy in how she sets her schedule. She's thinking about joining a primary care practice that's a little bit smaller, where the salary posted online looks lower, but the schedule seems to be more manageable for her. She's, however, unsure about the transition process, moving into that new practice setting, and all of the implications sort of on her career, her family, and her life. So with that framework in mind, my first question actually goes to Dr. Shabbir. What are some common signs that you see trigger physicians to consider a job transition?
I think it always starts with multiple things happening at the same time. And we try to find out, like, well, what's the first sign? In the physicians I've coached and folks I've worked with, one of the first symptoms of burnout that shows up is emotional exhaustion. You have this dread before work and you have this exhaustion after work. My first symptom of burnout was morning dread as well. I just did not, my body would not want to get out of the car, and I would spend this long amount of time in just waiting in the limbo. So if you're feeling emotionally exhausted, that's a symptom right there. The other thing that starts to happen is you start feeling disconnected from your purpose and your meaning in work. So you trained and you worked so hard to get to this point, but something is not adding up. And when that disconnect starts, the third thing that I start to notice is this growing resentment that starts to occur, whether it's in your personal life or professional life. That includes resentment towards administrative tasks that are being hurled at you. And then all of this is happening in this context of overwhelm, right? So you are likely feeling pulled in multiple different directions. You are juggling a lot of balls and a lot of them are dropping. And at that time, instead, you just are caught. And so overwhelm is very real. And then you start having actual physical manifestations of stress. You are having trouble sleeping, or you don't have time to sleep. You're tired, you're exhausted. You start having the Sunday scaries if you get to have a Sunday, and that Sunday is also filled with dread. It's a transition cue when your stress starts to become constant. It's not occasional, it's pervasive. And it doesn't have to be, I want to just echo this part, it doesn't have to be a terrible workplace. It can be a supportive environment and you can still feel disconnected. You can work within reasonable places and realize this no longer serves me. I have different focus now. I want to do a different thing in life, and that's okay. So those are some of the cues, physical, psychological, where it's time to start thinking about maybe it's time for a change.
Got it. I think a lot that resonates with probably a lot of people, myself sometimes included. And Kyle, so in that, like, let's say that mentality starts to get triggered and you're in that just starting to look phase. What are some things you'd recommend for someone like Emily to consider already about, preparing her documents, legal aspect? What things should she consider?
Yeah. I think if you're in the early stage, I think it's probably a time to decide what type of resources you're going to need access to, right? So do you need to, where are you going to look for a different position? Who are you going to talk to throughout that process? Are you going to have, legal help, or are you going to try to do it yourself, right? I mean, those are the things that I would try to start thinking about. I think we're going to probably walk through this process right in a case study. And so I think the next step is probably where you'd start to think about, if I've made the decision to leave, right? What does that look like for me? Then I actually have to engage with these processes. But early on, I think it's about analyzing the landscape, deciding what resources are available and what you're going to utilize.
Yeah. Do you have a typical timeline of like when I'm thinking about transitioning, when should I start, I don't know, having conversations with people that are at the employer, like in terms of like that 2-week notice, 3-month notice, whatever it is. And yeah, like
I mean, you want to know what requirements are in your contract, right? So I mean, there are some that are going to have very short periods, 30 days maybe, but there's some that are very long where they're locking you in for 3-year terms. And so I think you need to know where you're at in that timeline to start to have those conversations. But then also, we always advise people that you don't want to walk away from a job until you have the next one lined up. You don't want to be in a situation where you're void of a job or of an income, coming in. And so, we think you want to focus on getting that next job first, and then you kind of worry about the exit and the timing of how that looks like.
Got it. Back to you, Dr. Shabbir. So once that decision has been made, how do you plan for the actual transition itself personally, with your family on the home front? Let's say you have to move, all these kinds of things. What do you recommend?
The first thing I recommend is to slow down. And that's like the opposite of what we want to do. We want to hop from one place and rush into the other place, because what's going to happen if you rush, you're going to carry whatever you're experiencing right now from place A to place B. So the first step you want to create is actual white space. You want to have time to pause, to reflect, to prepare yourself mentally. And what does white space look like? If you can, I recommend taking a couple of days off of work and sleep, because most of us are sleep deprived. And depending on your responsibilities at home, I found myself very sleep deprived in the early career years. I had toddlers and I was tired, and no good decisions were going to be made from a sleep deprived mind. So please rest. That would be the first thing. Start creating, as Kyle mentioned, very clear professional timelines. Like, what does it look like? What does it look like if I stay? What does it look like if I leave? Talk to your family. Start the process of talking. So first, go sleep, hydrate, eat a nutritious meal. If you can go for a walk, do that. And then start talking to the immediate people around you. Like, I'll give my example. The first thing that led me to make a massive change was I just walked in and I noticed, oh, I have a husband and he looks utterly disheveled as I am going through my career and my house and all of that. So look around you and start talking to the people, because the decision that you make will impact everybody in your circle. What will your routine look like? And yes, I always talk about finances, 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 because whatever happens to you, how you feel that you are coerced, manipulated, will make decisions from finances are a very important part of it. Now, talking about that with clarity is important because you might think you need all these objects in your life. You might not. So pause, slow down, assess, and audit where your finances are. I will highly recommend talking to somebody who's a professional, whether it's a coach. There are lots of wonderful physician coaches out there. I know from me, when it was time to transition from fellowship into getting my second job, having somebody in my quarter really helped me walk into interviews with a very different energy. It helped me clarify and have very specific plans laid out that were tangible. I felt anchored and clear. And so talking and asking for help adds clarity. And again, look at all of these elements. Recognize that this is a stressful time and you might want very linear answers like, okay, I have decided no longer to be here and I want to go to my next opportunity, but things will not progress in a linear manner. Go talk, rest, go talk, collect data, and then make informed decisions, whether it's data in your personal life, your finances, what is inside your contract, what will exit look like, all of those details.
And how do you make sure that the next place that you're going to is going to be that safe haven, right? Or maybe not a fully safe haven, but at least a safer haven for your needs? How do you go about assessing that?
We often ignore our intuition because as physicians, we are overworked, again, sleep deprived, and we're disconnected from what our gut is telling us. And as woo-woo as it sounds, listen to yourself. There is actual real data behind it. I mean, some of us might have read the book Blink. So it has to go into that gut feeling that you're having. If you're talking to the people on the other side and I notice a lot of hesitance, a lot of fear, like almost every email you're sending to the recruiter, if you are having this feeling in your gut that these people are not very friendly, that will be a sign of what in the future your communications might look like if they're showing a lot of rigidity, inflexibility. So it's really important for you to show up as your best self. Be professional. Don't ghost people. Don't ghost recruiters. Don't be professional. Put your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then remember to lean into your intuition. So that is really important because the way they're communicating to you before and during this process, it might be a very important marker of what it's going to look like afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing I would say. And then look around. How do the other employees that are working over there look like? Notice their body language. Notice how they present themselves on social media. Look at LinkedIn. There are places that you might even ask, can I talk to the other people in practice? If you can't talk directly, it's fine. Go connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a message, ask them to connect with you offline. It's okay. So ask and do as much data gathering as you can before making that decision. Also know that you don't have to go from point A to point B. And this is where like some of the deep work comes into place without why are you leaving job A and why are you going to job B? Are you running away from something or are you running towards something? So you have to get very clear because if you're running away, you're going to just keep running away till you exhaust yourself.
Right.
What was the very clear problem that you had in place A? Was it a you thing or was it a systems thing? We all work in systems that are deeply flawed, but sometimes it is a matter of getting good at your communication skills, advocating for yourselves. So it's really important to get clear on that. This will show up when you're communicating about your needs with the other folks. So when you're looking at the other place, try to get as much data as you can offline and online in a professional way. And again, don't ignore your gut.
Yeah. It's so hard to find that like level of transparency when you're looking for a new job or really any new opportunity. And that is sort of why I've been so almost evangelical in a way about networking for physicians, especially now that we are getting into more like employment contracts with larger corporate systems because of exactly what you just said. So finding avenues to find the right people to talk to, getting that transparent sort of like under the table advice where people are feeling more comfortable to have a one-on-one conversation with you, I think is so important in order for us to like actually have the data we need for informed decision making. And it's just so hard to find sometimes, but you know, that's something that I've been very, very loud about promoting. Going back to Kyle. So, all right, we made the decision that going to switch to a new job. How would you recommend like whether or not to go about it yourself through the process versus nope, absolutely need a lawyer every single time, 100% of the time? Are there cases where like you can potentially DIY it? How would you recommend that?
Yeah, I think, part of the question I would ask yourself is, did you have a good contract that you were leaving? Because usually the answer is no, right? And so if you did that yourself, you might want to think about having somebody help you out with that. Now, I think the bigger question is do you want somebody to negotiate with you or for you, right? I think every single person signing a contract that's of six figures, whether it's for real estate or for an employment contract, right? Ought to have somebody look at it. I mean, these are high value contracts. So should you have it reviewed? Yes, right. That's a no-brainer. I would not encourage you to use ChatGPT. I would not encourage you to use your YouTube skills, right? I mean, I joke about ophthalmology a lot because my wife is an ophthalmologist, but like I can go YouTube a cataract surgery, right? Yeah. I should not do a cataract ever, okay? But I can understand it. I can know what a phaco, machine is and all that stuff. So, I think you should get help, right? That's obviously bias coming from me, but I think that's true, whether it's us or somebody else that you use. Beyond that, I do think there's a lot of what Dr. Shabbir said on, trusting your gut, knowing the institution. Do you have any relationships there already that you want to protect or to not insert an attorney into that process? I think there are situations, right, especially if you're joining a private practice, where we encourage you to have those conversations, colleague to colleague, doctor to doctor. Utilize support as needed, right, in those processes. But if you're joining a large system, I mean, they're going to have their team, right? They're going to have their counsel, they're going to have their fair market value representatives, they're going to have their recruitment team, and so it's pretty daunting, I think, sometimes to say I'm going to go in and do this myself against a team of 10 people that do this all day every day. So that's one of the benefits on that insider information that doesn't exist anywhere. I mean, we do have some of that, right? I mean, that's what we do all day, every day, is we talk to the HCAs of the world. We talk to the large employers that are out there. And so, we have relationships too. It's not that we're going in and, screaming at people, right? I mean, we're collegial, we're, professional. And so I think you have to decide if that's what you want or if you think you can do all of that on your own. And I think it's rare that you can do it on your own, to be honest.
Got it. If you, let's say, she didn't get legal support, or this person didn't get legal support, is there a checklist or something that is a bit like out there that says these are like things I need to make sure are clarified, at least to a certain level of personal comfort, before being able to sign? Is there a minimum number of terms?
Yeah, well, I think it varies. I mean, these contracts are anywhere from 3 pages to like 100, right? And so it really, really depends. So, I mean, anything that's important to you for sure should be on your checklist, right? We have things on our site, do-it-yourself tools where you can go in and plug information in to see if it's fair or not. You can have your contract kind of instantly reviewed on our site. There's good resources and blogs and podcasts you can listen to. I mean, I would do all of that to the best of your ability. But it's really, really going to be specific to the situation. So like a private practice situation or an academic situation is very different from just being employed with the health system on what you should be checking off. So we try to make sure everything is custom to you and that you're not just taking a blanket and getting 80% of it right, because that's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, got it. And when do you link up with the legal service? So is it before you start even applying to jobs? Should it be after you apply to a job? Should it be once you start getting offers? What's the right timing?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you're going to utilize it, but certainly before you would get any type of documentation, I mean, you shouldn't be signing a letter of intent. And that's one of the biggest, kind of thorns in the side of everybody in our team, is that clients will come in saying, hey, I just signed this letter of intent and now I want to negotiate everything. And you're like, ugh, you just missed it, right? Like you just had your chance to negotiate it and you signed off. So I think the earlier the better. We structure a lot of our stuff to give that access for, 3 months or 12 months at a time. So you don't have to guess at the exact day you need the help. You can just have access whenever it comes in. So earlier in the process is better for us.
Okay. Can you elaborate on the letter of intent concept? I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between a letter of intent versus an actual contract. Sometimes the fact that they may be overlapping, maybe there are institutions that actually use the LOI as a contract. Like, I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, so a letter of intent is just, do we agree on basic terms, right? And sometimes those are binding documents, and sometimes those are non-binding. In academic settings, they're kind of the full contract usually. I mean, it looks very short. It's very succinct. Sometimes it's even called, here's your offer letter. And so there's some confusion around that. But it's essentially, do we agree on comp? Do we agree on termination provisions? Do we agree on the non-compete? And then if we do on these core items, we'll move to the full 30-page document that flushes everything out more. And so the problem is that if you say, sure, that sounds fine, I'll look at this whole, big picture, and then I'll come back and negotiate. It's not necessarily that it's legally like impossible to do that, right? Especially if it's a non-binding offer. But the problem is that there's, human relationships say, well, hey, you just said yes to this, right? You just told me $50 per work RVU was okay, and now you're asking me to change it. It just makes it really, really hard for you. So you're throwing up a barrier that you wouldn't need to if you negotiated at the right time.
Got it. And then what would you say about, in that kind of same vein of like, we talked about this, you agreed to this, like, maybe having a bait and switch after happened would kind of really suck. So how do you make sure, or what should you watch out for, that maybe you had a verbal agreement with the person, and then let's say you didn't see it on the contract, or you saw it on the contract, but it's vague. Like, how do you make sure that things are actually kind of put on paper?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. It's usually not around numbers. The numbers usually match up from the LOI to the contract, but it's usually like, you told me I'd only have call 1 and 3, and the contract just says I take call. Or you told me I'd have a PA with me or an NP with me, and it says nothing about support staff, right?
Okay.
And so those are usually where I'd get Dr. Shabbir's thoughts on this too, but it's usually where burnout happens first. It's not about that you're being paid the wrong amount. It's that, hey, I'm taking way too much call and I have no support staff, and I'm here charting at 9:00 at night. And so that part of the contract you can get right. I mean, you can define that stuff to a point where you're satisfied. Most contracts don't start out that way, and most contracts have what's called a merger clause that wipes out every email, every conversation you've had, and the only legal terms that are binding are what's in that document, and that document's often really, really vague.
Got it. So like, basically get everything on paper, make sure everything has some clarity behind it. Don't just take some email or verbal agreement. So even an email, like, which is in writing, like, don't just take that for granted that's what the true deal is what you're saying.
That email won't be legally enforceable. It doesn't mean that they won't uphold their end of the bargain. I mean, I don't think, all administrators are bad people. I think they're, they're trying, but sometimes the people that made those promises aren't there. Right. I mean, they move around job to job too. And so, I mean, you could get it 18 months into a position, and the person that told you whatever your call schedule is 1 and 3 is now gone. Right. And now you're on 1 and 2, and it stinks.
Yeah. Does it matter who you're negotiating with? And like, is it different? I mean, I assume it would be, but like, if you're trying to look for a private practice job, like in Emily's case, versus if Emily was just switching from hospital system to hospital system, who are the people that she would maybe be dealing with that's different between these different organizations?
In a large system, it's almost always recruitment first that you're going to be, chatting with, and then they'll move it to either a contracting division or maybe legal, right? Depending on what your questions are. There's comp committees, sometimes that have to meet to approve compensation changes. In a private practice, it's almost always the partners, right? Sometimes if the practice is big enough, they might have a CEO or somebody that manages, the practice, but it's almost always a colleague, right? Which is why I think you need to be more prepared or ready to have those conversations yourself if you're dealing with, a colleague that you want to be an owner with at some point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's useful to kind of vet them and how they handle a business transaction if you want to run a business with them, 2 or 3 years down the road.
Got it. Dr. Shabbir, do you coach physicians during this like negotiation process? Do you have experience with people going through it? And what are some of the things that they are common threads between them?
Yeah, I absolutely coach and support physicians during this process. And I just have to echo a lot of things that Kyle just said. And I want to spell it out for anybody who did not hear it from like my standpoint. please always have legal counsel, have an attorney over and over again, especially with the first time contracts, because it's residents and fellows and they're getting their first job and we're talking. And yes, I know like money is not falling from the sky. I understand that. But come on, like you are signing your life into a legal contract with real implications. You are going into this eyes wide open with the burnout statistics, with all the other statistics. You need to know what you're signing up for, what your exit strategy is going to be. So there's this like this very real, like frustrating. I'm trying to come up with better words for this. I've always had attorneys present with me. I've never DIY'd things because I am a serious person. Are you a serious human making a serious life decision right now? I am assuming you are. So this is a very like permission to please contact your attorney right away. And I have done that for any decision that I've made in my life. It has served me so well because when you have someone like Kyle in your team, like the way you show up changes completely. The way when you say, I'm talking to my attorney or my attorney is reviewing this, the leverage that you have, the energy that you bring shifts completely. So the first thing that I talk about when I start coaching people during this process is, please, have you reviewed this with someone who actually knows what you're signing up for? And even though I can look at a contract and I can say, I can tell you how miserable or happy your life will be, depending on the structure in there, you still need somebody who's actually trained and qualified in this. I cannot underscore this enough. And the reason is what happens is you are confusing a lot of things. And so when we become doctors, there's a lot of confusion that happens between our personal and our professional lives, such as our emotions that can be easily manipulated everywhere. What we feel for our patients can then be taken, be taken advantage of in this whole negotiation process. So it's really important to create clarity. For clarity, you need to understand you need an attorney. You need a lawyer to review what you're doing, first of all. The second thing is you need to understand, are you just going to go and buy the first house that you see, like, it's your first time home buying and you're just going to walk in and buy the first house? So when I talk about, is it okay to negotiate? I don't want to appear difficult. I want to, like, I really like this job, whatever it is. No, you're not going to go buy the first house. Everybody on the other side expects you to interview with multiple people. So what you're doing is, why am I talking about confusion regarding emotions? It's really important for you to understand that this, at the end of the day, is a business deal that's happening right now. You are an amazing physician. You have all the empathy and compassion. If you secure this appropriately, will be the only way for you to actually practice medicine to the highest degree that you are trained to do so. So when I talk about this very real fear, like I don't know if I can even ask for anything. Like a lot of times it's like, this is a standard contract, I've been told. I don't think I need to get this reviewed by an attorney. I don't think there's any room for change. Well, even if there's no room for change, first of all, that's a lie. Secondly, you need to know the exact details of what you're signing up for, and what your exit strategy is going to be. And nobody can explain that to you than your own attorney in a one-on-one setting. I really okay, I'm going to stop being repetitive over there. And the second thing is, it's okay to ask. It's okay to negotiate. Don't just walk in with, I am toxic gratitude mentality. I'm so grateful I got this job. And it's okay. Like golden handshake. I just want to see my patients. So a lot of time that happens. And sometimes there's a whole different degrees. Physicians are people too. Sometimes we have the optimism is off the charts. Sometimes the pessimism is off the charts. Whatever it is, I love to bring in objectivity. Be serious about this process. And when you talk about like talking to a coach or talking to an attorney, a lot of times you're thinking of this as a cost. All of this is cost. So I invite you to shift the mindset from cost versus investment. You're investing in your clear future. And serious people take serious decisions. So take serious decisions. Don't be afraid to ask for things, because again, this is a business deal. Don't be afraid to ask for, like, I walked through people at every step of the way. First, when we're entering the conversation, to interviews, to what's going to be the after communication. And there's a very specific way to conduct yourself. You can be professional, compassionate, kind, show up sharp, put your best foot forward, and you can ask for what you want in those kind, respectful, compassionate, courteous ways. You don't have to over explain yourself for every little thing. You can stop talking, write proper emails. Like there's a whole etiquette that follows, but it all starts with this mindset shift, this very like rigid mindset that has been told to everyone, especially when they're trying to join a larger corporation. Like this is the contract. This is standard. Nothing can change. Sign this. Everything's going to be okay. We know how that story goes. It's never going to be okay. And you can always ask for shifts. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox here.
No. You brought up so many good points that triggered a couple questions. One of the things you mentioned is like that when someone says, "Oh, this is a standard non-negotiable." Kyle, I want to get your take on that sort of position that people take. Let's hypothetically say Emily's like vehement that she's not going to work with a lawyer, and then she hears someone say, "Oh no, this is standard. Like this is a non-negotiable." What would you say to that?
Well, we hear that about every 30 minutes over here. So that's a very normal clause that every institution, whether it's a solo, private practice like this case study maybe, or a large employer, they all want to keep their contracts consistent. I don't think that makes them wrong. I mean, they drafted them, right? But I do think, like, zoom out for a second and just think about the economics and the supply and demand of physicians. I mean, there's a huge shortage, right? So when there's a shortage of anything, there's leverage in that situation. And so if you are in the position of having leverage and it's really, really expensive to recruit and retain, they ought to want people that are going to not only sign the contract, but stay. And so it's really a business decision for them on, is it worth us changing our quote standard contract in some manner? It can be with an amendment, it can be with an exhibit. It doesn't have to be, we put up your entire core contract, right? We can still get to terms that are okay in exchange for having an employee, right? Because most physicians are employees now, that's going to be more likely to stay long term, right? And I think that's the people in the business office for sure would be okay with making that deal, right? Now, whether recruitment will, whether legal will, I mean, those are the hurdles you're going to have to cross. But I think the business of medicine says, yes, we should make adjustments that are appropriate, that are done in good faith, that are reasonable for physicians if it gets them to stay long term.
Got it. One other thing that often, not often, every time it'll affect a job transition is the restrictive covenants that you might have signed with your previous employer or your current employer. Can you talk a little bit about those non-competes and non-solicits and maybe other restrictive covenants that could affect where a person can take a job? And then I was actually going to switch it to Dr. Shabbir as well to talk about like the fact that maybe you'll lose patients that you really care about simply because legally you're not allowed to take those patients with you. But Kyle, first with you, can you talk a little bit about those terms?
Yeah. So what restrictive covenants are? It's promises not to do something, right? So a non-compete would be, I promise not to go into business within a certain area for a certain amount of time. Non-solicitations mean I'm not going to go solicit both employees. I'm not going to try to take staff with me, but also I'm not going to try to take patients with me. The good news is that patients ultimately control the decision on where they receive care. So general advertising is not usually included, right, in the definition of solicitation. So if you're just have your website up or whatever your online advertising and patients find you, that's usually okay. But you can't send letters to them. You can't show up and say, "Hey, come join me," that type of thing. The non-compete is really the bigger one. So non-solicitations kind of are what they are. Non-competes are problematic, right? And the FTC kind of hopped in on this about a year ago, right, and thought about banning them across the country. That rule went through, but then it got challenged, and it's currently in appeals, right? We don't know what the outcome is going to be on that. Every state law is different on this, and so some states have modifications or limitations on them for physicians. Most are still structured to say if it's reasonable, you can enforce them. And so that's a hard spot to be in as a physician, because what's reasonable in the eyes of a judge, we don't know, right, until we get there. And that's an expensive process to go through. So I think you want to solve it up front, right? Make sure you're entering a non-compete that is appropriate for you. Ideally, you wouldn't enter them at all. But if you have to, make sure the timing and the geography is limited enough to give you some options. It's one of the biggest factors in physicians not renegotiating. So people that don't want to leave, right? They've got kids in school, their spouse has a job, whatever it is, all their families there. If they have a non-compete, they're much less likely to renegotiate. And so that's a huge cost on your career. The FTC estimates it's like a six-figure number every year that you're going to lose in compensation. So it's a huge detriment to your long-term earnings.
Got it. Is there any room to negotiate while you're exiting with your current employer about the contract you already signed? Is that a thing that people do?
Only if you have some leverage, like they're in breach of contract or you did something. Otherwise, they're going to say, no, we have a legally binding contract, we're going to hold you to that. Right.
But, yeah, I was curious. Yeah. And then Dr. Shabbir, your take on, you work for a hospital system, you're going to go work for a private practice or maybe even open your own practice. And you've been just like your primary care, you've been attached to your patients kind of for so many years. How do you prep for the idea that you're going to be losing a lot of these relationships? How can you potentially salvage some of those relationships in any way that's not, legally breach a contract? I wonder if that's come up in your practice as well as a coach.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And great question. Dr. Chen. So first thing is to validate and normalize this, because a lot of times what we think is that this is an experience I'm having in isolation, this what I call abandonment that shows up in different ways. I am abandoning my patients. I myself felt this way when after 4 years of practicing primary care, I was transitioning into fellowship. I loved my panel. My patients gave me so much joy and I had excellent relationships with them. And I felt that way. Am I abandoning my patients? There is a very real moral weight that all of us feel in different capacities. And I think that while it is lovely and it's wonderful, and I never want to second guess that part of me, I also know that that is the exact part of me that tends to get manipulated. That is the exact part of me. The emotional side of me is what is always, it's where boundaries are crossed. It's where people pleasing shows up. It's where I tend to stay stuck into behaviors that no longer serve me or my goals. And then eventually that leads me to become resentful and cynical and burnout and not actually want to be there. So then what you have is really not the compassionate human who was there to begin with. So do not confuse fact with all of this other stuff that's happening in your brain. It's okay to have those emotions, honor that. But also realize, what are the facts of this situation? The fact of the situation is you are a human being. This is not a life sentence. You have decided to make a change that will serve you, your family better. My children will always have one mother. My patients are able to go find another physician. That is the reality of my life right now. So making this decision, you have to look at what are the facts of your own life right now. And the reason I keep going back to your own is because when you don't consider your decision worthy or your life or your family worthy, then every other interaction that you're going to have will be for people to validate you. So you want your front desk staff, your nursing staff, your colleagues to validate this decision that you've made to navigate this transition. It's not their job to validate you. Most of them are also burnt out themselves and they're merely trying to survive. So when you go out and you're like, well, I made this decision, everybody's angry at me, that's really not going to help anyone. So lean inwards and recognize the decision that you made is really important for you. You can't go outside looking for validation. Now, with that, again, don't confuse fact with fiction. All the emotions that are coming up for you are okay, but don't get confused with them. Leaning back inwards will then allow you to create this graceful exit plan. When you remember who you are, you also remember to show up as you are. You are an amazing, compassionate, professional doctor. Continue to be that person. I still have subsequently coached some of my patients. They found my coaching practice and we did work in that. And I had a wonderful time, So who I am I am the same person I was as a primary care physician. I am the same human. Continue to show your dignity and your grace and don't let people's comments or lack of validation weigh you down. So when you continue to show up from that space and you're generous, people are automatically drawn to your energy, will stay in contact with you. Things don't have to end always with a war or a battle, or it doesn't have to be ugly. You can be in a wonderful practice and still decide to move for a different part of your life. So know that when you are putting out that energy, you're automatically going to have those experiences. So lean into that, stay in contact. I do recommend having some sort of online presence, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's even making like a simple your first and last name.com or something with a doctor, so that if your patients want to look you up, they can look you up. If your colleagues want to look you up, they can look you up. I'm in contact with almost all the clinicians I worked with before, and many of like the office staff, we're still in contact. So know that this will be the end if you make it the end of communication, of collaboration. Always lead with generosity, be fully present, and don't go out looking for validation for your decisions.
That's great. And is there anything you would add in terms of like nervousness about a new environment? Like you talked about, maintaining your relationships with your patients and colleagues from your former environment. But now it's like new setting, maybe new city. You're really nervous that like, will you be good enough for all of this? Will you have to learn a whole new set of skills in a new environment that you're not used to? How do you coach someone through that?
First of all, I've had the tremendous privilege of not just coaching early career clinicians, but also like program chairs, which was very impostery for me on the other end. I'm like, how am I going to coach you? But we got a lot of wonderful outputs from that. And I coached on imposter syndrome. And I'd like to use the term imposterism more than imposter syndrome, so we don't turn it into an actual illness. First thing is, if you are experiencing those emotions, also congratulations, you're a normal human being. That is not a psychopathy. You are in a new environment. It is natural. Like, I don't want to pathologize this fact that if you are hesitant, if you are afraid, if you are feeling all those emotions, it's okay. That's a part of growth. So before we turn into like, okay, here's a label, I have a new fancy label for you and you can like walk around with the label, it's okay. This is part of a normal transition. Self-compassion is so important for you, and self-compassion ties into the same thing. You are worthy of being kind to your own self, just like how you would be to other people. Why am I saying self-compassion? Because it takes patience to be in a new environment and learn a new system. But what has happened in this social media driven world is we want everything to be like one click away, one like, one dopamine hit. Well, you're in a new practice. You're going to learn things. Again, lean into those core tenets. Show up with professionalism, kindness, curiosity, grace. Lean into your values. If you show up everywhere professionally, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing's. Yeah. You can always remember to ask for help. So all of those feelings that you have, the term that keeps coming up is like deficient. Like, I'm a fraud. Someone's going to find out I'm not a good fit. What if this was the worst decision I made for myself? All of those are very real thoughts that have come up for me as well. I mean, I heard you in a podcast interview say that you still have some of those thoughts. So those are human thoughts that come up for all of us. Nobody gets to some proverbial green pastures and says, oh, this is it, and now I shall live here and retire forever. No, that doesn't happen. Be kind to yourself and be patient with yourself. Normalize those feelings. Lean into, again, professionalism, kindness, curiosity, beginner's mindset. Everything else will follow. You don't have to have all the answers on day one.
Those are excellent reminders, and I need to internalize those myself. I'll switch over. One last question directed to you, Kyle, which is sort of a long one. Can you walk through the like ideal or what your recommended path / relationship with a legal service, with a lawyer, through this process? What is that like? What does that look like? What are the things that you're helping to do along the way? And then when does that relationship end? Like, what's the last kind of correspondence that happens?
Yeah, so here's my preferred, right, is that you would, whether you're finishing training or you're going to make a career transition, that you would say, hey, I know that this is going to happen, and I know it's going to happen in the next 12 months, right, at some point in time, right? Because these aren't, again, quick decisions. You shouldn't be making knee-jerk decisions. So if you know that's coming up, or if you know you have this hard end date of residency finishing, you should say, hey, I'm going to engage somebody, and I want them there for the next 12 months, right? That's ideal. I don't want to have to worry about billable hours. I want to be able to call and email when I need to, right? And I just want that support behind me. So if you engage early, right, before you have anything, if there's questions that come up that are like, hey, what is a normal non-compete, right? I just want to know, right? You can call and get that answer or email and get that answer. If you say, hey, I just need to know what median compensation looks like, or I need to know what the MGMA median is for a work RVU, right? So you're informed going into conversations. I think that's great, right? It makes you be your best, right? As Dr. Shabbir is saying, it's your best foot forward. Then next step is you're going to have that person, right? You're going to have a relationship already that you're going to say, hey, I got my first LOI. I got my second LOI. I got my third LOI. Let's talk about these. Let's try to evaluate those. What's most important for me? What terms are good, bad, or ugly? And then we're going to move towards hopefully signing one of those, right? Hopefully getting an employment contract, not letting go of offers B and C yet until we have a fully signed employment contract. We'll work through those terms. We'll modify things that need to be modified. We'll help negotiate if we can. And obviously, at some point, hopefully not too far off in the future, you're going to sign that contract, right? And you're going to be quote unquote done. Now, it's not usually done right on that exact date. There's credentialing that has to happen. There's, you're going to move and you have to make sure you're getting your relocation paid, at the signing bonuses paid, and all these things that happen. And so it's nice to have, hopefully an extra 3, 4, 5 months post contract of still access to somebody as those questions come in, because they always come in, right? So that's the perfect world. The opposite end of this, which is what I would tell you not to do, is, oh my gosh, I've walked myself into a corner. I have 2 days to sign this letter of intent because I've waited 2 weeks to even look at it because I was busy, and now I have to have a turnaround in 1 business day, and I need all these things changed. You're not going to get changes. I mean, that's the unfortunate answer is you don't have leverage at that point in time. So earlier is better. Work with somebody for hopefully a year, right? 12 months, have that full access, and you're going to get the best outcomes in those situations.
I like that tip about like having still the relationship ongoing after signing, because it's like, what if the person that you negotiated with or the employer you negotiated with doesn't come through with paying your sign-on bonus, paying your relocation bonus, and fulfilling their end of the contract? Like, what do you do? Has that happened with any clients, and you had to help them out? Like, what was it like?
Unfortunately, it does happen, right, where things change. I mean, we have employers that file for bankruptcy, right, after somebody's signed, right? We have clients that say, hey, I signed this offer, and now 2 months later, I got my dream job came in, right? And now I'm stuck between, like, how do I get out of a contract that I didn't even start yet? And so if you have that relationship there, it's easier to just call and, get some advice on, should you pursue the dream job, or are you stuck legally now, right, based on what you signed? Right. So yes, those situations arise all the time. Frequently we see people coming back, on kind of a 12-month cadence anyway, just to review, am I still at fair market value, right? Has life changed for me? Do I need to think about getting out in 18 months? What does that look like? Is partnership coming up? What do I need to evaluate? So I think it's good to have that ongoing relationship with someone as well that you can lean on, throughout your career.
Got it. One last question for the both of you. How, and maybe, I don't know if your takes will be the same or different. How many offers do you recommend a physician have, or apply to, and then like have offers evaluating? Is there some minimum number to like just make sure you're making a good decision and have some options, or not really?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll let you go.
Sure. Okay, so my recommendation is most physicians that we talk to are geared on geography. So that's number one priority is, I want to be in Seattle. I want to be in Denver. I want to be whatever, middle of Iowa, because it's where I grew up, right? It doesn't matter where you're from. But people pick a location. And so if you're going to pick a location, you ought to know everybody in that location that's hiring. I mean, I would want to know, right? What are all my options in Seattle, if we're going to use that as the example? And so then once you know that, maybe you apply to all of them, maybe you apply to some of them, right? But you'd want offers and to see the market, in my opinion, on as many of those as you could in the geography. Now, you have to narrow it down at some point, right? So like, you should be seriously considering, in my opinion, at least 3, maybe 4. That's kind of the upper end. If you get past 4, it's a little bit of information overload. You're splitting hairs between 4 and 5, which are not really your front runners anyway. So like, if you can get to 3 or 4, I think that's a really good spot.
Okay. Dr. Shabbir, thoughts?
That was a really good answer. I tend to also see, I've sat down and gone over like 10, 20, 25, and then we're sorting through things. And just like Kyle said, that at this point we're splitting hairs, but that's okay. So one thing I want to make sure that I communicate is this idea. Most physicians lean into very maladaptive part of the perfectionism spectrum. So rigidity is the thing that comes up. I'm going to get a job. This is the job. I'm going to have all the answers. And then, so if anything is a little bit, the inflexibility, and I'm saying this not from a high horse, I suffer from rigidity severely when it comes to this, I should have all the answers. And this process is not like that. You have to be flexible. So yes, I think 3 to 4 is a good place to be. But if you're feeling that we're at 10, 20, and you don't have, like, a lot of times I'll be coaching physicians, and then they have certain geography spots in their mind, especially the early career ones, who are looking at, well, I'm looking for a life partner right now. I'm looking for this. I think it's really valuable to sit with somebody and look at those lists objectively. But then I also ask this question, well, what if you actually knew? Can you see yourself living here for the next 3 years? And a lot of time that tends to start shrinking the geography very rapidly. But don't sign the first thing. Don't just sign one. There's no leverage. And also, before you actually sign and have the process completed, don't just start saying no to all the other options that are on the table. I also noticed that. And then there is a trouble when that happens. Okay, well, the first thing didn't go through for whatever reason. And now I just said no to like 3 other really good options. And then there's a lot of anxiety and panic that comes up from there.
Got it. I want to thank you both. Those were all the questions that I had in terms of conversation topics, but I want to open it up to the audience, whoever's here. If there are questions that you have, feel free to pop it in the Q&A or chat. In the meantime, Dr. Shabbir or Kyle, do you have questions for each other that maybe came to mind as we were talking?
I'll go first. I've got a question on the imposterism, I think is what you called it. What percentage of physicians do you think have that syndrome, or whatever we're going to call it?
I wish I had a good number, but I have not met one yet who said that they didn't have it at a certain phase of life. And I think that when I will meet the person who said that they had no imposterism or imposter phenomena happen to them, they probably would lean towards the more cowboy, I don't care what happens to the world spectrum. Not that there's anything wrong with cowboys, but when you put them in medicine, there's a problem. Because I think that whenever you're conscientious and you want to put your best foot forward, you're always going to feel that there's something that's missing. But there are very real risk factors and things that tie up. Perfectionism is one of them that makes it all the way more worse. So if you're hypercritical and you are rigid and you're a perfectionist, then when you walk into a new job or a new place or space, you don't have all the answers, and that's going to make you feel worse. So that's my thought on that. But I also just really want to add to, I want to give a shout out to you, Zhen, that you are just, I love the philosophy of Grapevine and what you're trying to create, so much transparency. So I would love to hear more about that. I think that is such a valuable resource that you're creating.
Yeah. No, happy to share a little bit. So the premise of Grapevine is to allow for more peer-to-peer support, like just point blank, right? And what that actually means is having a digital space that is accessible, affordable for all physicians to come together, not siloed by their institution, their geography, or their specialty, and just be able to have this space where they can, if they had a really good resource, like they worked with Kyle or another one of the team members at Resolve, and they want to recommend them, they can come on and say, I had a great experience and I want to recommend this service. If there's someone that has some insights to share about an employer, they can come on and share about that. If there are open roles, jobs, whatever it is, right? Like everything is just peer-to-peer sourced. And then we divide it up into spaces based on your professional, personal interests and goals too. So if you're interested in a very specific topic of research and you don't have anybody else in your own institution that is working on something similar, so you need to go abroad and find people from other institutions, that's kind of hard to find that. And so on Grapevine, you have this space to be able to connect and find other collaborators. Same thing if you want to decide to go non-clinical and look at roles that are in hospital administration, leadership. Maybe you want to go into startups and tech and these kinds of things. We have entrepreneurs and we have people who have done these roles before. And so you can find those individuals to connect with, in addition to having access to events just like this one, courses and all this kind of stuff, without needing to pay like $1,000 or whatever it is, just to access it. So that's sort of the premise, because I think, and we've mentioned this twice in this conversation, with nearly 80% of doctors being employed by larger systems, there is a higher and higher need for more grassroots, I would say, sharing of information with each other. So that's my mission with Grapevine, and hopefully can continue to grow that. And if anybody is listening to this and wants to join the community, feel free to send me an email. I'll post it that going along with the live recording post, and I can send a link for that. On that note too, I want Kyle to mention something that Resolve has, which is like the salary comp data, because that is also something that's very peer sourced. And so, Kyle, I'd love for you to talk about that, and then I'll let each of you give like one big soundbite level takeaway before we completely close out the chat.
Sure. Well, I'll go and I'll give my soundbite at the end of it, and then Dr. Shabbir, you can go. So what you were referencing, Zen, is kind of the do-it-yourselfers, right? And we've talked about this a couple of times. We do feel like there should be a solution for that. So what we have is what we call an instant review. You can get that for less than $200, right, on the site. So it's very, very affordable. It's not free, but it's pretty close to free. You get peer-to-peer data from things that are verified. So we think that having good data is the most important thing. So you're going to get verified data from real contracts that we've reviewed. You're also going to get access to MGMA data, right? So we know that employers are going to lean on surveys. They're going to tell you that fair market value and compliance is coming at certain numbers. You're going to have to vet that and verify that. And so we're going to give you snapshot information on that as well. We're also going to give you kind of an instant risk review of the contract that you've got. So we're going to run it through the playbook that we've trained, right? So it's not just a random, AI that's out there. It's based on thousands and thousands of physician contracts. So you can feel pretty good about the analysis that it's doing. And that's going to get to you in 10 minutes, right? It's a platform, you can access it 24 hours a day. So when you're online at 2 a.m. with your toddler, you can check your numbers if you need to. And I think that's, the goal for a lot of people is just to see what the market looks like, right? And then decide from there if they need more help. And so that's certainly something that's out there for you. My biggest, takeaway is be empowered, right? I think we have far too many physicians that feel like because they're employees now they have no leverage. It's certainly not the view from where we sit. I think if you do your job the right way, if you're a good candidate, if you're professional, if you have multiple offers, you're going to see good responses from employers. You're going to see them want you, you're going to see them need you, and make the adjustments that'll keep you long term. So be empowered, get good help when you need it, and make sure you have access to information.
Thank you. And Kyle, how can people find either yourself or Resolve Services? How do people look you up?
Yeah, resolve.com. This is the quickest and easiest way you can go and check out, information like this, podcasts that we've done, free tools, right, and then data tools, and also attorney access if you need it.
Sweet. Awesome. Dr. Shabbir, over to you for one final big takeaway.
That was so well done from Kyle. So I'm just going to piggyback off of it. If you deserve a good life, you worked so hard to get here. And if you are thinking of a job transition or even advocating for yourself where you're at, there's nothing wrong with you for thinking that. I have coached people surrounding that. So there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting a different part of your life to shine now. And yeah, you do deserve to be happy. So if the traditional medical system is not catering to your needs, or you're in that very deep cynicism bucket right now, and you firmly believe that nothing good will ever happen as a doctor to you, it's time to step away and sleep and think about recreating your life, because you do deserve a life that is not miserable.
Thank you so much for that. And Dr. Shabbir, how do people find you and find the Early Career Physicians Institute?
Thank you. So you can find it at earlycareerphysician.com. And I hang out on LinkedIn a lot. I never thought I would say this, but yes, my first and last name, and I'll be there. And you can also listen to my podcast, which is Success Reimagined.
Awesome. yeah, we'll make sure to post everything along with the live recording. And for me, if you're looking for Grapevine, that's Grapevine spelled with the Y. Our website is grapevine.health. Website's under a little bit of construction right now as we go through a small transition period. So when you look at that, when you go there, don't be so totally surprised. But that's grapevine.health with a Y. And if you're interested in joining the community platform that we have on Circle, just email me. I'm Zhen, Zhen, at grapevine.health. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. I think this was really, really helpful for me and hopefully for everybody else. I know I have plenty of career left in me, so this will definitely come in handy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Take care, everybody.